Good evening, folks. Welcome to the program. It is 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, 10 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Left Coast Time, and it is time for this program. This is, however, just the pre-show. As anybody who is a regular listener knows, this first 3 minutes after the hour is spent just making sure we're set up because we go live on air on the radio station, OdysseyRadio.com at 9:03. So we've got, about 2.5 minutes left. And then we will be going live. We're all set. Sound is good. We've got things going over on. Whoops, I got to turn that off. That sound off. Hold on. Turn that down over there. And make sure we're playing on StreamYard. And we are playing, excuse me, over on Patreon. So you can join us there. And I just want to put a note out for those of you who are not on Patreon. Well, you're not going to hear this if you're not on Patreon, so I'll wait till the radio show to announce it. But for $4 a month, you get 30 shows at least over on my channel, over on Patreon. And as we build up a little bit, we'll be doing even more stuff. So there it is, folks. And those of you who are, excuse me, my wife made some chili. And I just horked down a cup of that, and I've got peppers in my throat. So, what was I going to say? Patreon. We've got 2 more patrons over there. Thank you for joining and coming in. I sure appreciate it. And we've got about 1 minute left, and we go live over on the channel. And I see some people that I'm glad you're here. So we might have some people listening over on Patreon that were not here before. So, but have been regulars to the show. Thank you very much. And that's Everend. I want to thank you for that. And so, hey, Barbie D, you're over there on Patreon. Thank you for being here. And as always, so good to see you. Randall Flagg, I'm sure, is here somewhere as well. And we're going to talk a little bit about Valiant Thor tonight. We brought him up last Friday. So here's what we're going to do right now. As is custom, we go dark, and then we'll be going live. So stand by. We'll be right back.
Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.
Happy Monday evening, everybody. Welcome to the program. I am your host, Scotty Roberts, and this is the Intrepid radio program, broadcasting to you live at Odyssey Radio, ODYSY, spelled a little differently, ODYSY radio.com. That is the audio format of this program, where you can go listen to that. You can hear it in archive over there as well later. And we're simulcasting over on my Patreon channel, where you will pick up the live video simulcast of this show. And let me just say, for anybody out there, and I give this to the radio audience that's listening audibly, if you like this show and you support this show, you've been listening to this show for years, now's your chance to help this show grow. So for a mere $4 a month, ching, 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 $4 a month, you can get about 30 shows per month on this channel. You'll get every show that we broadcast live and then some. And the goal with Patreon is to grow this channel to where we can do some amazing things in the near future. So we leave that in your hands, and thank you for being here. Thank you for spreading that word, and I appreciate it. Now, the chat room you'll find over at Patreon isn't quite the same as the chat room over on YouTube has been. Well, what you're going to have to do is go over there for right now, and you'll have to refresh the page, and you can just read. The chat room is in the comment section below the video. So thank you for being here. Let's get on with it. Let's do something that we have done a lot in the past, and we're maybe doing a little bit more of it. We're going to do Spark Courage. This is a little extemporaneous exercise that I started a couple of years ago. And this is that little book of faux matches that Rainey picked up for me at a garage sale for like, I think, $0.25. And all this is, it's 50 ways to be bold. It says there are 50 faux matchsticks in this box, and they look like that. The light's really bright up close. They look like that, but they have a message on the back side. And it's something to think about, and something to a way to be bold and show your boldness in life. And so this is the one we did on Friday that happens to be on the very top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reach in here. We're just going to mix them up a little bit and grab one out of here. And let's see a way that we can be bold today. Let me grab one out of here. Here we go. Folks, you're going to see it as I see it. Let's hold it up. It says, speak or perform in public. Now, this is a way to be bold, to show your boldness, to show your courageousness. Speak. How is that worded? Speak or perform in public. Now, I've done a lot of performing in public. I've done a lot of speaking in public. This radio, in a sense, is speaking in public, the radio show, and I've done this show just in its current format. We've got about 900 shows archived over the last 5 years. And you can see a lot of them over on YouTube. And there are some that will start putting up the older episodes pretty soon over on YouTube, where we started over on Patreon, where you're missing these. We'll take them and we'll play them up over on YouTube. And because we get them all recorded. And so we'll do that. And by the way, a little bit of business. Maybe you can express your opinion on this. My wife said she was watching the show from camp last week, and she doesn't like my background. She said that dark background, she says, it's just not working for her. And if you remember right, now I've switched the studio around here. I'll just flip this over this way. That's the old background over against that wall. And so I could switch things back around, flip things around, and maybe we'll do something. We'll do a little set dressing and come up with something that works. Maybe put up some studio lights like we were going to, which I've still got a bunch of studio lights over in that corner. You know, the big kinds at the hangers and the barn doors. Put them up, do some gels, do some cool stuff. We'll see what we can come up with that is Rainey approved. But speak in public. This is a way to build boldness. Perform in public. Sing. Act. Read poetry. Do something like that in public. I love to speak in public. I love to sing, as you all know from this show. I love to do things like that. So it's really easy for me. But one thing I found was that increases my confidence. It increases my boldness. It helps me when I start getting out of my shell. And I know, let's be honest, folks, you all know me as a very sheltered, quiet, reserved type. And so I have to do some of those things to break out of my shell. But what that's going to do, the more you express your boldness and your courageousness, the easier it's going to be to do. Do you know what really did that for me? Was for the years I performed at the Minnesota Renaissance Festival. Breaking out and performing at the Renaissance Festival, street theater, extemporaneous theater. Yes, you had to build characters and build a backstory and things like that, but the audience doesn't care about your backstory all that much. You just needed to have one so you knew a context for what you were going to do. And then you go out on the street and you entertain. And that is the thing that really helped build my confidence in public speaking. Even though I did it before that, I was a youth pastor. I spoke at church and did things like that. And I guarantee you, I was never a boring speaker when I spoke at church. I didn't get up and say, turn in your Bibles now to the book of James, chapter 2, and let us homily for the morning. I didn't do that. I spoke at church the way I speak on this radio show. And so the more you speak, the more you have the opportunity to do that. Seize it. Take it. If somebody says, who would like to speak at the such and such function? Put your hand up. I'll do it. And figure out how you're going to do it if you've never done it before. It's a great way to build your courageousness and your boldness. Get out there and speak publicly, perform publicly, sing mares eat oats and does eat oats and little lambs eat ivy, a kit'll eat ivy too, wouldn't you? Whales eat eels and snails eat eels and little clams eat oysters, a squid'll eat oysters too, wouldn't you? And then the rest of the song. So pop into song extemporaneously. People might think you mad, but do it anyway. I think it's a great way to get to build your own boldness. Now, I want to move on to tonight's topic. This is one that came up last week when we were talking about the UFO disclosure stuff, the hearings going on in Congress. We talked about that, and we did all our shows last week. I released them to go public so everybody could listen and tune in and know we're still here. Even though we're rebuilding this audience over on Patreon, there is going to be a day where this Patreon has more listeners than we've ever had. And it'll be just like old times. And we'll get a good chat room going over there so you don't have to keep refreshing to see what people are saying. But come on over there. Get involved over there. Help support this show. And we'll do some magnificent things. But all in all, saying last week we did public shows. This week we're going to go back to Patreon for the week and hopefully tantalize you all to come in and say, if you enjoyed last week's shows, come on in, see what we're doing. And we'll try to hit some good topics that you're going to enjoy. And it might be that you have to wait for 8 to 10 weeks to be able to hear the show. If you don't, we'll eventually put it up. But for now, here it is. So, Valiant Thor. How many of you out there, by show of hands, know who Valiant Thor is? Do you know who he was? Do you have any idea what he was all about? He was somebody I had heard about just in passing. I was only familiar with the name and that it was connected to UFO stuff or something like that. And I really didn't have any idea of who he was. And it wasn't really until this last year that I found out more about Valiant Thor. Now, Valiant Thor, this is a name that's captivated the imagination of many people for decades. He's said to be an extraterrestrial. He was a being who came to Earth to deliver a message of peace and hope to humanity. And according to the stories that are told about him, they're not just urban myths. There are a lot of stories told about this guy. He arrived with a team of people and stayed on Earth for a certain period, during which he shared advanced technology and had encounters with various individuals. And despite the controversy surrounding his existence, Valiant Thor's story has become a part of modern folklore, and it continues to inspire curiosity and speculation. And I want to delve for a little bit into the mystery of who Valiant Thor is and explore his purported mission on Earth. But I've also got, there's somebody that he reminds me of. There was the movie, the original movie, The Day the Earth Stood Still, not the Keanu Reeves remake, which was fantastic. It was well done. But the original, I'm looking up the date for it right now. The Day the Earth Stood Still, release date September 18th of 1951 was that movie. Now, if you haven't seen that movie, it's where the famous quote, Gort Barada Nikto came from. If you don't know what that was, you're going to have to go watch the movie. But The Day the Earth Stood Still is a 1951 American science fiction film. It was released by 20th Century Fox. It starred Michael Rennie. Patricia Neal was in this movie, and then a bunch of other people you might recognize. Hugh Marlowe, Sam Jaffe, Billy Gray. If you remember him, he was Bud, the oldest son, on Father Knows Best in that TV series. But the screenplay was written by Edmund North, based on the 1940 science fiction short story Farewell to the Master. And it's set in the Cold War during the early stages of the nuclear arms race. And the storyline involves a humanoid alien visitor who comes to Earth, accompanied by a powerful robot, to deliver an important message that will affect the entire human race. And in 1995, the film was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry as culturally, historically, and aesthetically significant. And of course, they did the remake in 2008 with Keanu Reeves. So the plot of the story was this. When a flying saucer lands in Washington, D.C., the United States Army quickly surrounds it, and it's parked there out on the green in Washington, D.C., in front of the White House. And humanoid emerges and announces that he comes in peace and with goodwill. When he unexpectedly opens a small device, he's shot by one of the soldiers and wounded. And a tall robot emerges from the saucer, quickly disintegrates the Army's weapons, and the alien orders the robot Gort to desist. He explains that the now broken device he was pulling out was a gift for the President of the United States that would have enabled him to study life on other planets. The alien, Klaatu, is taken to Walter Reed Army Hospital, and after surgery, he uses a salve to quickly heal his wound. The Army is unable to enter the saucer. Its entrance is closed, and the ship is made of impervious metal. And Gort, the big robot, stands guard outside, silent and unmoving. And Klaatu tells the president's secretary, Mr. Harley, that he has a message that must be delivered to all the world's leaders simultaneously. And Harley tells him that in the current world situation, the Cold War going on, that this is impossible. Klaatu proposes that he will spend time among the ordinary humans to better understand their unreasoning suspicions and attitudes. Harley rejects that proposal, and Klaatu remains locked in his hospital room. But he's able to escape and stays in a boarding house using the name Mr. Carpenter, Major John Carpenter, adopted from a dry cleaner's suit tag. And among the residents are young widow Helen Benson and her son Bobby. And Klaatu becomes a mentor to Bobby, while Helen's suitor, Tom Stevens, becomes jealous of this new stranger in the B&B in the house. And the boy takes Klaatu on a tour of the city, D.C., including a visit to his father's grave in Arlington's National Cemetery. Klaatu learns that most of the dead are soldiers killed in wars. They also visit the Lincoln Memorial, and Klaatu asks Bobby, who is the greatest living person? And Bobby suggests Professor Barnhart. And they visit the scientist's home, but he's out. Klaatu is able to enter and sees that Barnhart's blackboard is covered with equations, attempting to solve the three-body problem. And Klaatu adds to them, and after being discovered by the housekeeper, leaves his contact information. And he actually finishes part of the equation on the chalkboard and leaves it for the doctor. That evening, a government agent escorts Klaatu to Barnhart. Klaatu tells Barnhart that the people of other planets are concerned about Earth's possible aggression now that humanity has discovered and developed rockets and rudimentary atomic power. Now remember, this is 1951. He states that if his message is ignored, Earth could be eliminated. And Barnhart agrees to gather scientists from around the world at the saucer. He also suggests that Klaatu peacefully demonstrate the power he represents beforehand. Klaatu returns to his spaceship, unaware that Bobby's following him, Bobby watches as Gort knocks out 2 soldiers so Klaatu can re-enter the saucer. Bobby runs home and tells Helen she doesn't believe him, but Tom is suspicious, the boyfriend. The next day, for a half an hour, starting at noon, East Coast time, all electrical equipment on Earth ceases to function, except for essential services such as hospitals and aircraft in flight. And Klaatu learns that Bobby watched him in the previous night, and he visits Helen at work, reveals his purpose on Earth, and asks that she not betray him. Helen asks Tom to keep Klaatu's identity secret, but he refuses to listen, already in the process of alerting the military. Helen and Klaatu rush to Barnhart's home. They hope that Barnhart can hide Klaatu until the meeting that evening. Klaatu tells Helen that if anything should happen to him, she must go to Gort, the big robot, and say, Klaatu Barada Nikto. The army tracks them to their taxi. Klaatu is shot and killed, and his body is moved to a nearby police station cell. Helen rushes to the saucer and speaks Klaatu's phrase. Hearing the words, Gort retrieves Klaatu's body, revives him inside the saucer, though Klaatu tells Helen that his revival is only temporary. Klaatu tells Barnhart's assembled scientists that an interplanetary organization has created a police force of invincible robots like Gort. In matters of aggression, we have given them absolute power over us, Klaatu concludes. Your choice is simple. Join us and live in peace, or pursue your present course and face obliteration. We shall be waiting for your answer. And then Klaatu and Gort depart in the saucer. And that's the end of the movie. So that's the theme. But this whole thing with Valiant Thor kind of reminds me a bit of Klaatu. Tall, good-looking, stately-looking gentleman. And he comes to Earth to offer something to Earth that we need. So I've got a few things here. And if you saw the graphic for tonight's show, if you're over on the Patreon page, all you have to do is scroll up and you'll see the graphic for tonight's show. And that graphic shows you one of the few pictures that was taken of this Valiant Thor. He's the guy on the far right. And he met with Eisenhower, and he was welcomed into the Pentagon and into the government, into the White House. And he had a lot to say and a lot of offers made. And he had people with him. They were all meticulously dressed, and they all looked meticulous. And it was very interesting the way that they were received by our government because of who they said they were. Now, remember, this is also post-Roswell, the UFO alien crash, things like that. So here are some things about Valiant Thor. He's captivated the imagination of many people for decades. He's said to be an extraterrestrial who came to Earth to deliver a message of peace and hope to humanity. And according to the stories, he arrived with a team of people. And there are pictures that show them together. And despite the controversy surrounding his existence, Valiant Thor's story has become a part of our modern folklore. And so let's take a look at his purported mission to Earth. Who was Valiant Thor? Valiant Thor is a name that's often associated with conspiracy theories and extraterrestrial encounters. According to various sources, he was an alien who arrived on Earth in the 1950s, and he stayed here for several years. His story is shrouded in mystery, and to this day, it's not clear whether he actually really existed or not. Now, they do have photographs of him, like the one in tonight's graphic, where he's in meetings and he's presenting things. There were people there. There was more than just a small handful of people that interacted with him. But why is he important? Because despite the uncertainty around his existence, Valiant Thor has become an important figure in ufology and conspiracy theory circles. His purported arrival on Earth and his alleged mission have been the subject of a lot of speculation and scrutiny, and of course, skepticism. And some believe that his visit was a turning point in human history, while others dismiss it as a hoax. Now that we had these hearings last week, which is just a tip of the iceberg, and we've had the whistleblowers who claim that there are alien spacecraft that were back engineering, who also claim that there were non-human biologics in these craft. What do you think of the possibility that there was an alien, came in full human form, and presented things to our government, to the President of the United States, to the Pentagon? Was it a hoax? Enough people saw him that we know that it happened, but there were a lot of questions around it. Was it a hoax, meaning was it faked? Was it a misinformation, disinformation thing? Was it a charade put on by the U.S. government? So, according to the story, he arrived on Earth in 1957 along with two other beings. They landed in Alexandria, Virginia, which is kind of like a suburb of Washington, D.C., and were met by a police officer who took them to the Pentagon. Now, you want to ask, why in 1957? If you asked a police officer, said, I'm an alien, take me to your leader, would they drive you to the Pentagon? These were different times, folks. This is Cold War period, post World War One. World War II. And Valiant Thor claimed to be from the planet Venus, which is in our solar system, which we know too close to the sun, too hot for human life. But he said that he was part of a delegation that had come to establish contact with Earth. Now, did we just not know enough about Venus in 1957, which was 66 years ago? Or Valiant claimed later, he said, well, all of civilization on Venus has moved underground because the surface is too hot. So this was his claim, that this is where he came from. Now, you also think of those days of early science fiction in the early part of the 20th century, up through World War II. We were looking at Mars and Martians and invasions from Mars, and that there were planets in this solar system that sustained life. Right now, we know there isn't any that we know of. Could it be underground? Possibly. But this was the claim he made. And he was here part of a delegation to establish contact with us. And the witnesses to Valiant Thor's arrival, there were several of them. They claimed to have seen Valiant Thor during his time on Earth. One of them was Dr. Frank Stranges. You could pronounce it Strangus or Stranges. Looks like Stranges. Who wrote a book about his encounter with Valiant Thor. And other witnesses include government officials who allegedly had direct contact with Valiant Thor and his companions. And there is a book by Frank Stranges maybe. Let's see if I've still got that up here. Let's see. I'm going to back this up to where I was looking for this book. And I can tell you more about it. Let's go here. We'll just go Valiant Thor. I just want to give you the title of the book. Stranger at the Pentagon is the name of the book. And it's by Dr. Frank L. Stranges. Dr. Stranges was born and educated in Brooklyn, New York. He received his bachelor's in divinity as well as a PhD in psychology and philosophy, and from Faith Theological Seminary in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Dr. Stranges was a member of the Mayor's Advisory Council of Los Angeles and a member of the American Association for Social Psychology. He also held a PhD from the National Institute of Criminology in Washington, D.C., and was an accredited diplomat of the American Academy of Professional Arts. And Dr. Stranges authored several books on scientific and religious subjects, including his classic The Stranger at the Pentagon, which tells this unusual story of a spaceman named Valiant Thor. Because Thor was a real person who appeared in public on a few occasions, including the United Nations headquarters in New York City, the legend of the stranger at the Pentagon has grown, becoming a real head scratcher for 21st century UFO researchers. And today, it's still one of the hottest topics in ufology, having spawned various other books, documentaries, and even feature Hollywood films. And so, I think the film is called "The Stranger in the Pentagon," if I'm not mistaken. So, what exactly happened to Valiant Thor? Did he get back on his spaceship, return to his home planet? Did he help the U.S. government set up alien-human hybrid experimentation in remote underground bases? Or was he imprisoned, thrown in the clink by those in the government who've been fighting UFO disclosure all these years? All those theories are out there. He disappeared in 1960, 3 years later. So since no one knows how long an alien can live, could Valiant Thor still be alive today? Somewhere in or under our nation's capital? And so this book, you can get it. It's the 6th revised edition. And it features an introduction by Dr. Harley Byrd, who is the nephew of Admiral Richard F. Byrd, explorer, and an epilogue by Valiant Thor himself, who wrote the epilogue for Dr. Strange's. And there's lots of photos covering years of UFO history. It's probably well worth getting. And so that is the book that was written about him, and written by a guy that actually met him and talked with him, and so on and so on and so on. So where did he come from? He said Venus. Venus is uninhabitable. Is it possible that Valiant Thor and his companions are from another planet altogether? This is some of the speculation that goes on. So his claim that he came from Venus was debunked by scientists. The history of Valiant Thor's race, according to the story, Valiant Thor was part of a peaceful race of aliens who had mastered advanced technologies and had achieved a high level of spiritual development. They were said to be concerned about Earth's state of affairs and had come to offer their assistance. So, what was his mission exactly? Why did he come to Earth, according to himself? Valiant Thor's purported mission was to offer his help in solving some of Earth's pressing problems, such as nuclear weapons, poverty, climate change, even back then, yes, 1957. He claimed that his race had been monitoring Earth for centuries and had observed that humanity was on a dangerous path. Now, look at our world today and ask yourself, if he really was here offering those things, did it not succeed? Did our government turn him down? Did they appear to other governments other than the United States? It's interesting. His message was one of peace, love, unity. He urged humanity to work together and to overcome their differences. He also warned of the dangers of nuclear weapons and the need to transition to cleaner sources of energy. His message was met with skepticism by some, but it resonated with others who saw him as a beacon of hope. So imagine where we were in 1957. The war had ended 12 years earlier, World War II. 10 years earlier, the Roswell crash took place in New Mexico. I'm pretty sure most of you listening are familiar with the Roswell incident. We'll cover that in great detail one of these days, very soon, maybe even this week, to get us more detail and up to snuff on that. But it is said that we have technology today that is the product of the back engineering of the spacecraft that had crashed at Roswell and was found, retrieved, and brought to then Area 51. So you've got David Grouch, we talked about last week, the whistleblower, who claims that we have alien craft in our possession, several of them. I think he said about a dozen of them. Hey, that's a lot of crashes. Some, he said, weren't crashed at all. They were just sitting there, left operating, meaning the lights were on, but nobody home. And they retrieved those craft and are back engineering them. His claim is also that there were biologics, non-human entities. He didn't say if they were dead or alive. But the thing about David Grush is his credibility is off the scale. So is he lying, or has he been lied to? Has he been put to delivering a message of misinformation, or is this the truth? And why would we have that message being delivered to us? It's something many people seem to already know. We just knew the government wasn't acknowledging it. So to say that Valiant Thor at the time was seen as a beacon of hope is probably a very real appraisal of the way people saw him. We'd come out of the war, we were now in the Cold War, and he was offering something that we wanted. Now, could that happen today? What if somebody walked in to the president's office today or the Pentagon, suit and tie, looking good, no way to trace his records of who he was, and he claims he's from another planet? Now, in 1957, you might have been able to pull that off. Today, you can't. Somebody's got your DNA somewhere. They just run his DNA. What if they run his DNA and find out, oh, he's Germanic in his bloodlines? Oh, and they say, well, he's obviously then not an alien. So things like that. So I don't think it could be pulled off as a hoax today, that's for certain. But certainly back in the late 50s. The people who interacted with Valiant Thor is interesting too. His arrival on Earth was not a secret mission. In fact, he made himself known to the U.S. government in 1957 and was invited to live and work at the Pentagon for 3 years. Hence the title of the book, The Stranger in the Pentagon. He was allowed to live there. They gave him a residence and his people. And it was during this time that he interacted with top-ranking officials and scientists, such as President Eisenhower and Vice President Richard Nixon. He interacted with these guys. Additionally, Thor had encounters with individuals outside of the government, including scientists and religious leaders. He even visited a church in Alexandria, Virginia, where he spoke about the importance of love and unity. So he got around for 3 years. Now, the technology that Valiant Thor shared after his arrival on Earth was accompanied by the introduction of advanced technology. Advanced. Remember the whistleblowers during the hearings last week? They were asked about the craft. The one pilot was asked, and he said, this particular craft, he says, it looked like a clear globe with a cube on the inside, and all the corners of the cube touching where it met the circumference of the sphere, and that there was no visible means of propulsion. There was no exhaust. They couldn't see windows or pilots or anything like that. The thing moved at incredible speeds and veered off into nothingness at right angles, which current aircraft cannot do. And he characterized, when he was asked by one of the congressmen what he thought of that technology, and he says, how advanced would you say it is? And he said it would be like us handing an iBook or a tablet, iPad, to a Neanderthal who has no idea of even electricity, how a thing like that would work, has no concept of it. He He says that's how advanced I think that thing was from what we have now. So Thor is apparently offering advanced technology. Now, what's interesting about that is you see the boom in our technological advance over the last few decades. It's like once we made that leap to a transistor, which happened within 10 years of Roswell, did that come from the back engineering? As some claim it did. Came from the back engineering of the craft recovered from Roswell. And that technology allowed us to develop transistors. And that those transistors now developed, look at what we can do now. Look at the chips that we make that go into phones. Did you know my cell phone, sitting right here in my pocket, this has more computing power than the Apollo spacecraft had. This phone right here. And that's raining, by the way, in case you're wondering. So I've got in the palm of my hand more computing power than it took to send astronauts to the moon. And it sits in my pocket. And there's ones that are even smaller, thinner than this, foldable. That kind of technology, when you think about it, the Apollo spacecraft had something that had less technology in it than an old Commodore computer, that you played Pong on back in the early 70s. So he's offering technology to share technology with us. And he shared his knowledge with the U.S. government, which included advancements in energy production, transportation, and medicine. Look at the advances we've made in all of those areas in the last 50 years compared to all of human history. It's like the breakthrough came, and then all of a sudden, there we were, advancing like we'd never advanced before. One notable piece of technology was the composite energy device, which could generate electricity without any harmful environmental effects. Another invention was a replicator, which could take any material and replicate it without the need for mining or extraction. I'd like to have one of those. These technologies were revolutionary, but unfortunately, their development was halted after Valiant Thor's departure from Earth. He was the one that was leading the technological development of these things. So there is a huge controversy, as you can imagine, surrounding his existence. The skeptical viewpoints of Valiant Thor that despite witness testimonies and official documentation, there are still skeptics who doubt that the man even existed, even though there's lots of records that he existed. Some argue that the story is too fantastical to be true and that there's no concrete evidence to support his existence. Now, how many times do you think we as humans have been dissuaded by our governments or by people in control to not believe something simply because it's too fantastical to believe? That falls outside the realm of reality, especially in a culture like ours, which is very secularized. Too fantastical. There's no concrete evidence to support his existence, they say. There's no birth certificate, death certificate. Well, obviously, he's an alien, right? And others speculate the story was intentionally fabricated as propaganda during the Cold War to boost American morale and discredit the Soviet Union. If I wanted to boost morale, I wouldn't invent an alien character, especially during the Cold War. I'd say it was one of us. Our people did this. That's who you're in the Cold War with. Now, the evidence supporting his existence, on the other hand, there's many who believe Valiant Thor was a real extraterrestrial being who visited Earth. Witness testimonies, including those from high-ranking government officials, add credibility to the story. And additionally, there's physical evidence, such as photographs, audio recordings, that suggest Thor's presence was actually real. And the legacy he left was how the message affected society. Valiant Thor's message of love, unity, peace still resonates with many today. Not that he came up with those things or introduced them to humanity, but it resonates. His visit to Earth was seen as a call to action, urging humans to work together for a better future. Some have even argued that his teachings influenced the civil rights movement, the hippie counterculture, and the anti-war movement. Was he just simply placed to promote these things and used to make people go in a certain direction? Was he used for that purpose? Would the government do that? His influence on pop culture. His story has made an impact on pop culture in books, movies, TV shows, and his stories become part of UFO lore. And his likeness has even been used as inspiration for fictional characters, such as the Marvel Comics character of Thor. So the conclusion about the truth of Valiant Thor is, what can we conclude about him? What can we conclude about his existence? While there's evidence to support the existence of the man, the truth of his story remains very much a mystery. There's still questions regarding his origins, his purpose, his departure from Earth. He hasn't been seen since 1960, just gone, vanished. Said he was going home. However, regardless of his existence, his teachings of love, unity, and peace continue to be relevant today. I don't think those originated with him, but that same topic, those topics resonate with people. Now, whether Valiant Thor was a real extraterrestrial being or not, his story has had significant impact on society. It challenges us to consider the possibility of extraterrestrial life, the potential for intergalactic communication. His message of love and unity also reminds us of the importance of working together as a global community to create a better future for all. How much influence do you suppose he had on somebody like Gene Roddenberry, who created Star Trek, which it was a better future for all, a global community, a one world government, which many of us who are conservatives, we bristle at that notion, but a planet that was unified is the idea with that. You notice even on Star Trek, there was still Scotland and Iowa and Russia and Japan, and all those places existed on the Earth, but we were unified. That was the message Roddenberry wanted to get across, that we can do this. What if there is an extraterrestrial race out there? What if we're being visited? We talked about last week with these hearings. What if this is true? How do you think, and I'll ask this question tonight, that as I asked last week, if this is true, what would it do to us as a civilization, as a race, the human race? What would that do to us if we were to learn that we were the little kids on the block or the new kids on the block? What would that do to us if we found out we're not the only game in town? As a matter of fact, we're in one little speck, the blue. It was Carl Sagan's little blue dot. That we are in the universe. What about that? What would that do to your faith? What would it do to your spirituality? Anything? Randall says, Klaatu Verata Nikto, used hilariously by Bruce Campbell in Sam Raimi's Army of Darkness. Yes, I remember that well. Randall Flagg. Facial recognition. Yeah, that as well. So all of this stuff, you have to ask the question. You look at this all. If there was to be alien life, what would that do to us? Would it do anything to us? Would it change your perspective? If not on religion or spirituality, would it change your political perspective? Would it change the politics of this world? I think it better have. So, was he a real extraterrestrial being? His existence has been as a subject of controversy. There's no concrete evidence to prove or disprove it. Was his message real? According to the stories, his message to humanity was peace, unity, and love, and hope. He wanted to help humanity overcome its problems. And the technology, what did he share with us? He was said to have shared advanced technology, free energy devices, anti-gravity technology. You know, the corporations probably had him killed when they found out that he's offering all this stuff free because you can. It's like Tesla. Why did not Einstein, Edison buy out or try to crush Tesla's ideas? You can't make money on it if it's free. So has the Valiant Thor story influenced popular culture at all? Yeah, it has. Books, movies, TV. So all of this stuff is very interesting. Now, I've got a little document here as well that how much time do we have left? We got about 7 minutes left before we have to get off here. 6 minutes maybe. Where did it go? I may have closed down the wrong document here. But I had a document that spelled out a little more detail about him, and it was kind of like a little bit of a. I'm going to see if I've actually got it here. No, I don't think it. I think I must have shut it down. So we'll do without. We got Stranger in the Pentagon. Who was Valiant Thor? Maybe this is it. No, this isn't it. This is something different. So there's a lot out there on Valiant Thor. You can listen to. I take that back. I said that backwards. There's not a lot out there on Valiant Thor, but there's a lot of folklore about him. Even while I was researching him for this show tonight, I didn't find a whole lot on him. It kept, every time I looked him up, I kept getting the band Valiant Thor, who said they named themselves after him. But there's all kinds of books out there. Two Men of Earth, Valiant Thor's Message of Hope to Mankind. That's a book. You can buy that and read more about him in this book. Never has there been anything quite like it. Dr. Daniel Fry, an engineer in charge of the installation of instruments for missile control and guidance at White Sands Proving Ground near Las Cruces, New Mexico, was whisked away on an 8,000-mile flying saucer ride from White Sands to New York City and back. Thus begins his instruction by the illustrious Venusian thinker, Commander Valiant Thor, who wanted everyone on Earth to understand the truth about our existence and how we can spiritually profit from the beneficence of the extraterrestrial contact. Now, this special reprint book is available over on Amazon. You can see it. It's by Dr. Daniel Fry. It's called Two Men of Earth, Valiant Thor's Message of Hope to Mankind. That would be another great book if you want to read up on this fellow. We could do a series. I could just go into the books and we could do a big series on him on this show and others. But at the same time, if you want to find out more about him, go look him up. Take a look at the books that are available. There's some audio books in some of these as well. So he was pretty well known. He was well known by scientists. He was well known by good people. He was well known by politicians. He was known by Eisenhower and Nixon. the Pentagon? Is this a lot of what has been covered up for decades? And then the big question would be, if Valiant Thor was a real guy, a real extraterrestrial who visited us, why haven't we seen what seems to be tangible evidence of what he was offering? Why, if he came from a race that was more advanced than ours, have we not seen anybody else come in 60 years? There's the big question. That's what throws doubt in my mind. I want to see more. Or maybe they have come and we just don't know it. The UFO disclosure stuff going on now, maybe that's part of this whole process. Or just because we're being visited by aliens, that if they really do exist, doesn't mean there's just one of them trying to contact us. Maybe there's a whole bunch of them out there. It's like the people who lived in the New World when Christopher Columbus came. You had Amerigo Vespucci, you had Christopher Columbus, you had all the different explorers that would come here. You had Chinese explorers on the West Coast. You had Scandinavian Vikings that were coming earlier on. You had, if you hear that, by the way, it's my kids yelling in the other room. So if you think of all the people that visited this country, to the indigenous inhabitants of this country, it's probably not that impossible that there's more than one visiting here. And according to some people I know, very good people, who have passed on information to me that there is facilities here in the United States that house, if you remember the movie Men in Black and the comical kind of spaceport with all the different aliens, that something like that actually exists in New Mexico. It's not comical, but that there are over 100 different alien species here already that have been here for decades, if not longer. To the radio audience, we've got to get out of here. Thank you for being here tonight. Thanks for giving me your time. Everybody else, stick around for the Captain's Cabin, and would love to see you back here. We'll take as long as it takes in the Captain's Cabin, or as short as it takes. Radio audience, live long and prosper. See you next time.
Join us every weeknight at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, 10 p.m. Eastern. The Intrepid radio program, a Scotty Roberts Productions broadcast.
Hey folks, this is Scotty Roberts, and this is the Intrepid radio broadcast. I've been broadcasting for about 20 years now, covering such topics as science, politics, the paranormal, weird science, weird world history, archaeology, and the paranormal. Everything from ghosts to cryptids to creepy things that go bump in the night. So every week I bring you 3 new episodes. Come and join my channel and also be a patron to this site. So see the details below, and we'll see you here. Hey, folks, welcome to the Captain's Cabin. It is our after show if you're not used to what it is. And sometimes it's busy, sometimes it's quiet. It's busier than when we do our public broadcast out there on YouTube. And so if you're here, if you're sitting over in Patreon, you can still call into the show by entering that link into your browser. Hit enter, and you'll come right up in my window here. So we'll see how this goes tonight. If anybody would like to come in and talk about tonight's show or anything else, even if you aren't a member of Patreon, you can come in and be part of the Captain's Cabin. And so, interesting stuff about Valiant Thor. I think I want to do a little bit more on this topic and subject as it's heating up even more again and really building up. The whole extraterrestrial visitation thing. So we'll look into that some more. I've got more things we need to talk about in this program. I think we'll do something on Roswell yet this week. And so join us for that. I think it's very interesting stuff. And other than that, I've been working on the archaeology book, How to Be an Archaeologist. I've got just a couple of illustrations left, and this thing is done. Here, I'll show you this. I was working on this today. So here's one of the illustrations. This is just part of the pen and ink process. But you can see there's the penciling and the pen and inking. And this is where they're first coming into the tomb. It's probably the most lighthearted illustration of them all. It's got the camel in the middle back there, and the two Egyptians, and then our archaeologist. So this is the kind of stuff I've been working on here and getting this done. And hopefully that book will be out in the near future. We'll give you some ideas on what will happen to it, when it will be available, and so on. And it's a little hardcover book, by the way. So, and other than that, I don't have too much going on, with no callers calling in to discuss tonight's show or bring up some other topics. We may have to just call it a wrap for for tonight. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you listening to the show. Maybe we'll try to work out something that has to do with. I'll be honest with you, those listening on Patreon. I love the fact that you've given to my Patreon and that you're helping support this show. We're trying to build something, but there are definitely those who like the free stuff, and they'll listen to me as long as I'm free, but as soon as I ask for the amount of a cup of coffee, they won't. So, and that's sad. That's too bad. It's $4 a month or whatever you feel like you want to give to this effort. And we want to build something. And so I thought of maybe putting the Captain's Cabin on public after the radio show. But then you'll have those who will listen to the Captain's Cabin for free, but not listen to the show. It's just the way it works. It's the way people are. And so I don't know what I'll do with that. I'm going to think about it. Maybe give me your advice, your suggestions, and what you'd like to see happen here. And so that's about it. And let's see what else we got going on. Yes, there is a chat that you can get to by going to that link. So as well. So oh wait, we got Uncle John. Here he is. Hey John.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. How are you? Uh-oh, lost him right away. He might try back. Try me back, John. So I'm not sure where he picked that up. The link, he must have seen me post it. So John, try back if you're listening. So I don't know what happened there. We can talk a little bit if he calls back in. Let me here. I'll shoot him maybe a quick message and tell him, give that another try. John, let's see. To John Potter. Oops, wrong John. I hate when you type something and then you go to click on it and the screen scrolls it, and you end up clicking something else. Let me try again. See if he's going to be there, if he's going to be able to make it back in or not. We'll give it a couple of minutes. So if you're still out there listening, everybody else, we're still here. We're still operating. We're still functioning. I shot my wad for the show. Captain's Cabin works when you call in and when people call and want to discuss stuff or discuss what went on in the show. Otherwise, I'm just talking for another hour. So, see what you think. And John, I'm going to see if I'm not sure if you got my message. So I think we lost John. He might not make it back in. Maybe his phone died or something. Something like that. Because we had him for about 2 seconds. And then he was gone. So anyway, everybody, there we are. That's what we're doing. I feel very alone. It feels like it's echoey in here. So we will be back again on Wednesday with this program. And John, maybe we can get you in on Wednesday into the captain's cabin, and we'll talk more then. Everybody, until then, until I see you again, live long and prosper. Have a nice night.